stay exactly like that, like a wood spirit.
Billy, come down.
Billy, let's go.
Why do you call him Billy?
My name is Mr. Elliot, and I am the manager of this fine toy shop.
Why is he called Winnie-the-Pooh?
You can just pretend you were saying Pooh. So it's not a real name? They're our names, and we're keeping them.
The story started in 1916, during the First World War, when France and England fought against Germany. There was an English soldier named Alan Milne, and people often called him Blue. Several months after the war ended, he finally retired from the army. He then returned home to live with his beloved wife Daphne, and decided to work as a writer. Years passed, and Daphne was struggling to give birth to their first child that day. While outside of the room, Alan could worry about his wife and baby's condition, as he heard his wife's screams of pain, without being able to do anything. Fortunately, soon after, a baby boy was born healthy, and the child was named Christopher Robin Milne, but Daphne and Alan usually called him Billy Moon. Then, when he was 3 months old, his parents were very busy with their work, so they agreed to hire a nanny named Olive to take care of their child. As time went by, Billy spent almost all of his time with Olive, and now he had grown into a cute little boy, while Alan had become a famous writer. One night, at an event for his latest book, Alan's war PTSD suddenly returned while he was giving a speech as the spotlight shone in his face. He recalled the moments on the battlefield when the German troops killed his friends, and in that instant, he decided to leave the event immediately.
It's the first night of his new play, silly.
I wrote this. Later, at home, Alan finally came clean to Daphne and one of his friends, named Ernest Shepard. He explained that he had been pretending to be okay, but in reality he could never forget the trauma from the war. Because of that, to try to cure his trauma and make sure it didn't relapse, he invited Daphne to move to a house on the edge of the forest so he could calm his mind. At first, Daphne refused because she felt that their life in London was already perfect. However, seeing her husband's very stressed condition, he was forced to agree. The next day, Alan's whole family had finally moved to their new house. At that moment, Alan finally felt relieved because he was sure that his trauma could heal if he stayed away from the crowds. Shortly after they finished packing the items, Olive finally arrived with Billy. Then, Daphne gave him gifts to keep him company while he played, and they were a small stuffed animal named Piglet, a tiger doll that she named Tigger, a donkey named Eeyore, and a bear named Edward. However, things weren't as the family expected, because after they moved, Alan seemed to stop working for many days, and all he did was walk in the forest, build a chicken coop, and play with Billy. Seeing this made Daphne annoyed, and she felt that he should be using the piece he now had to write a new book instead of just playing all the time. Then, because she was so upset, she even threatened to leave and go back to London if he still refused to write, but instead of trying to be nice to his wife while she poured her heart out, he actually allowed her to leave if she wanted to. Even worse, the two of them began arguing about who would take Billy. Alan told Daphne to take Billy with her, but Daphne did not want to because she wanted to be alone while she was upset. On the other hand, Olive, who had been listening to the conversation from the start, then approached the two of them and said that she and Billy also wanted to go to London, because Billy had been telling her for a long time that he really wanted to see the animals at the zoo. Upon hearing that, even though she wasn't fond of the idea, Daphne agreed, and then she also still took the time as a mother to accompany Billy to the zoo. Billy looked so happy as they looked around the zoo and saw the animals there. That night, after returning from the zoo, only Billy and Olive returned home since Daphne stayed at her friend's house because she planned to keep being upset until Alan could publish a new book. The next day, Olive received news that her mother was very sick, so she hurried to ask for permission to visit her mother. Because of that, only Billy and Alan remained at home together. Then, while Alan was writing, Billy said that he really wanted his father to write a book specifically for him. Upon hearing what Billy just said, made Alan realize that he had never spent time with his son, so he took the time to go for a walk with Billy around the forest. In the forest, Billy told his father that he wanted to change his bear's name from Edward to Winnie so it would be the same as the name of the bear he saw yesterday when he went to the zoo. Then, Alan suddenly saw a bee, so he said to Billy that if there was a bee, there must also be a beehive nearby, and if there was a beehive, it meant there was honey, and if there was honey, there must be a bear. Alan then pointed to a tree, and it turned out that Billy's teddy bear was there. Upon seeing his favorite doll, Billy was happy. Day after day, they spent their time together, and the relationship between the father and son felt closer. They did everything together, from eating and playing to exercising. That day, while they were walking together, Alan took him to see a swan in the lake. When he saw the swan, Billy asked what the swan's name was. Alan then explained that a swan was a wild animal that did not have a name, but Billy and his innocent name wanted to give it one, so he called it Pooh. Later, when night came, Alan suddenly got an idea for his new book, so he immediately contacted his friend Ernest to come to the house the next day to talk about it. Then, the very next day, when Ernest showed up, Alan immediately told him about his idea. He explained that he wanted to make a children's book that described Billy and his dolls, so the two of them then tried to imagine the idea into a storybook, and it would be focused on Billy's bear named Winnie, which they called Winnie the Bear. Ernest began sketching for the book while Alan brainstormed the contents.
When we have enough, float you up to the branch. 3.
Al, are you home?
Just get everything you can.
There he is, he's looking a little bit glum there.
One day, Ernest found a poem that Alan had written and asked why such a beautiful poem was not sent to a publisher. Alan answered that the poem was something he created specifically for Daphne, and he would never give it to anyone. Upon hearing what Alan said, Ernest was touched, so he secretly sent the poem to Daphne in London. Then, after she read the poem written by Alan, Daphne felt very touched, so the next day, she decided it was time for her to return to Alan. The moment she showed up, Billy was very happy, especially when she gave him 2 new dolls, a mother kangaroo and a baby kangaroo named Kanga and Roo. The next day, Ernest, Alan, and Billy went to a hill. During the journey, Alan said that he planned to put Billy's name as one of the characters in his new storybook, which he titled Winnie the Bear. Ernest suggested that it might be better to use Billy's real name, which was Christopher Robin, and when he heard the idea, Alan immediately agreed without asking for his son's permission first. However, Billy actually wanted to refuse, but he could only stay silent. When they reached the top of the hill, Ernest was very moved as he looked at the beautiful nature there, knowing that during World War, many lands in Europe were destroyed, so it was hard to find a peaceful place like this. Being able to see a little boy like Billy play safely was a touching moment that was difficult for them to find during the devastating war. That night, while they were working on the storybook, Alan felt that the name Winnie the Bear was not quite right, and they had to find a new name that was more unique so that people would always remember it. While trying to find a better name, Alan suddenly remembered that his son once gave a swan the unique name of Pooh, so the two of them then decided to change the name from Winnie the Bear to Winnie-the-Pooh. The next day, Olive returned to work at the house, and when Billy saw that she was back, he was immediately very excited. For many days, Alan worked with Ernest on their storybook, and when everything was ready, the book Winnie-the-Pooh was published. Then, in just a few weeks, the Winnie-the-Pooh books were sold out all over Europe, and everyone truly loved Alan's work. One day, while Billy was playing in the forest, 2 reporters tried to take his photo because they knew that Billy was the real-life Christopher Robin from the Winnie-the-Pooh storybook. A short time later, Olive arrived and stopped them from taking Billy's photos without permission, and took Billy home.
I say, you're most awfully good at climbing trees. You must be Nanny. As in Vespers.
Billy, come down.
I want to speak to Christopher Robin. Did you get it?
Sorry.
Then, when they arrived, she immediately told Daphne and Alan about the 2 reporters, but instead of being angry about it, Daphne was actually happy, thinking that her son would soon become a famous star. She even supported the reporters and the media in showing her son to the world. The next day, Billy was invited to an interview by a famous magazine. Everyone who knew that Billy was Christopher Robin came, and it wasn't just a couple of people, the place was packed with fans. Then, after that interview, Billy became even more famous, and even the peaceful forest where he usually played was turned into a Winnie-the-Pooh tourist park, meaning Billy had lost his playing ground, especially when news about the Winnie-the-Pooh park spread across Europe. Not only that, but Alan and Daphne were also invited to America for the opening of a Winnie-the-Pooh bear shop. At the opening party, people kept talking about Christopher Robin, and Alan felt disappointed there. In the past, when he released a new novel, he was the one who was famous as a writer. However, with this Winnie-the-Pooh book, everyone only knew him as the father of Christopher Robin and not as the author. One day, on his birthday, Billy received a birthday wish from his father, who was in America, and he was very happy because he had never received one before. However, in the middle of the phone call, he heard the voices of other people, as it turned out that the wish from his father was only for show, because it turned out that his father was being interviewed at a radio station at that moment, and the birthday wish was only given so that people would think the relationship between him and his father was close. At the end of the conversation, when Alan was about to hang up the phone, he suddenly said goodbye to Christopher Robin, but Billy did not understand what that meant. He then asked Olive why his father, who always called him Billy, was now calling him by the name Christopher Robin. However, Olive didn't know how to explain all of this to a boy as innocent as Billy. The next day, Billy's parents returned home, and as soon as they arrived, Daphne immediately told Billy to change his clothes while saying that they were going to a fun place. Billy felt happy upon hearing that because he thought his father and mother wanted to take him for a walk. However, he was wrong because they actually took him to a toy store, where the manager of the store explained to him that he had made a contract with his parents. He then explained about the contract, which said that Billy had to meet his fans as Christopher Robin. Billy was clearly annoyed upon hearing that, because he didn't want to pretend to be Christopher Robin. However, his father kept trying to convince him, and he was forced to agree. Then, when Billy met the fans, he pretended to smile. At the same time, seeing his son's forced smile made Alan's heart feel pain, because deep down, he knew Billy was not comfortable with all of this. However, he felt that what he was doing was right because the money from the sales of the Winnie-the-Pooh books and toys would be given to Billy when he grew up. One afternoon, while he was playing with Olive, Billy suddenly asked if there was a place in the world where people did not know Winnie-the-Pooh, saying that if such a place existed, then he really wanted to live there. Upon hearing his words, Olive felt sad because a boy as small as Billy should have been able to live as himself, instead of being forced to meet and greet new people, sacrificing his time to play. He should have been able to play with whatever he liked and get love from his parents instead of pretending to be a fictional character just for the sake of other people. Because of his increasing fame as Christopher Robin, Billy's days were now full of busy work. He had to answer dozens of letters from his fans, walk around wearing the exact same clothes as Christopher Robin in the book, and even do interviews at several radio stations until late at night. However, even though he felt stressed and pressured, he still performed his duties with all his heart. One night, when he was going to sleep, Billy saw a man picking up Olive. Upon seeing that, he felt annoyed because he did not want anyone else to take Olive away from him. So, the next day, he told his parents about what he saw the night before, and that led to Daphne and Alan being angry with Olive. They then confronted Olive, saying that they had paid a high price so that she could focus on taking care of Billy and making him happy instead of spending it on her own happiness outside the house. After hearing the words of Daphne and Alan, Olive was fed up. She said that she had always worked well and tried to make Billy happy when his parents were not at home. She felt it was unfair to be scolded just because she went out on a date. She then said that just because Daphne had given birth to Billy, it did not mean she was already a good mother. Not only with Daphne, but she was also fed up with Alan. She said that just because Alan provided money for Billy, it did not mean his job as a father was finished. She even compared them to animals like cows and monkeys, saying that if it were for giving birth or providing food, even animals like them could also do that. The real job of parents, she said, is to make their children feel the meaning of happiness within the family. Feeling disappointed, Olive finally decided to quit. She then said goodbye to Billy. As the one who had cared for him since he was small, they had many beautiful moments together, and it wasn't easy for both of them to finally be apart. Then, before leaving, Olive asked Billy not to forget all of their memories so that they could stay connected even if they did not see each other anymore. That night, Alan kept thinking about everything Olive had said to him, and that made him feel that he had been too busy and had not taken the time to play with Billy or give him the attention he needed from his father. So, in the afternoon the next day, he decided to take Billy for a walk to the zoo. There, all the visitors kept watching Billy. Even the owner of the zoo was brave enough to force Billy to take a photo with a bear, even though it was dangerous because the bear could have attacked Billy at any time. In that moment, Alan realized that everything he had done was not for Billy's happiness, but was only because of his own selfishness. Later at home, Alan thought again about what happened at the zoo, and after thinking about it for a while, he finally made a decision. Not long after, Billy showed up. Upon seeing the boy, Alan told him that from now on he would stop writing the Winnie-the-Pooh books. He also said he would send Billy to a boarding school, hoping that by going to school, Billy could finally make friends as Billy and not as Christopher Robin. When he heard this decision, Billy was very excited because after a long time of pretending to be someone else, he was finally free to be himself. However, things weren't as Billy expected. When he finally enrolled at the school, the other students actually bullied him, and it happened for many years until he was an adult. Everyone called him by the name he hated the most, which was Christopher Robin. Because of that, Billy's hatred for Christopher Robin and the Winnie-the-Pooh book grew even more over time. One day at school, the government was holding a selection for the military draft, and every boy who was old enough to join was checked to be sent to the battlefield. In that year, every young man was required to join the military, but there were standards for weight, height, health history, and physical strength, and if they did not meet the criteria, they were sent home. However, not being sent to the scary battlefield was not a good thing, because boys who were sent home were usually seen by the people as losers or weak because they could not fight for their country. Unfortunately, Billy was one of them. At home, Alan invited Billy for a walk in the forest where the Winnie-the-Pooh park used to be. The park, however, had been closed for a long time. Seeing all the memories there actually made Billy feel sick, as he felt that Winnie-the-Pooh had destroyed his life. Then, since he wasn't drafted into the army, he asked his father to help him get into the army through a private connection, knowing that with the connections his father had, he could definitely go to war to defend the country and be a man that people respected. At first, Alan refused because he was afraid that his son would die on the battlefield just like his friends had in the past, but Billy said that since he was a child, he had always followed every order from his father without ever refusing. He did everything he was told, even though he had to sacrifice his childhood. So now, he said that it was his father's turn to grant his wish. Upon hearing that, Alan was forced to agree with a heavy heart. A few days later, after Alan tried to register Billy for the army, Billy's military orders finally arrived. Alan then drove Billy to the station. Then, while they were waiting for the train, Alan begged one last time for Billy not to go to the battlefield, even saying that he was willing to give all of his wealth to Billy as long as he stayed. However, Billy's decision was final, saying that if he accepted all the money from the sales of the Winnie-the-Pooh storybooks, it meant that he agreed to be Christopher Robin, meaning that he would be a fictional character who was not himself. Billy said that since he was small, he never wanted fame or money, as he only wanted a father to play with him. Billy's words felt like a slap to Alan, as the one thing his son ever wanted was time with him. He felt very sorry that he had wasted precious time with his son. He also remembered how he was not sincere when he gave Billy a birthday wish when Billy was still a kid, even once saying goodbye to little Billy's actual name, Christopher Robin. Now, while he looked at his son, he knew he couldn't stop his son, but in his heart, he kept begging him not to go, but that was in vain. Billy finally left for war.
As soon as I understood, I stopped writing it.
When I was Billy Moon, you never came back.
That's not true.
They gave me the ball. Here. It's for you.
Those days, just the two of us, they were the happiest I've ever known. Did ask me to write a book for you.
A book for me, not about me.
Don't go.
One day, Alan received an official letter stating that Billy was missing in action. Upon hearing that, his heart was broken. He kept crying in Billy's room because he felt so much regret for crushing his own son's life. He thought that if he had never made the Winnie-the-Pooh storybook and paid more attention to his son, all of this might not have happened. He felt that he would never see his son again. Day after day, Alan and Daphne lived their lives with great sadness, regretting their decision on their son, and although there was a chance that Billy was still alive, it was only a little possibility. That night, Alan prayed to God, asking for a second chance to meet his son again, and promised that he would never waste his time with Billy again. Then, a magic suddenly happened. That prayer came true because Billy was actually still alive, and he returned home safely. Alan was so happy to see him as he welcomed him. Soon Daphne joined them, and Billy gave his mother a kiss on the cheek.
It isn't Billy Moon.
Hello, Blue.
They told us you were dead.
Mother, not too worried, I hope.
Unexpected. Are you really here?
I believe so.
Later, Alan invited Billy to go to the hill where they had once gone with Ernest. Upon arriving there, Billy told his father the story of what happened when he was missing on the battlefield. He explained that his team was separated from the battalion and was almost killed while being surrounded by German troops. But in the middle of his despair, one of his partners suddenly sang the Winnie-the-Pooh song. It was the song that Billy hated so much, but when his partner sang it, he began to realize why everyone knew the song by heart. It was because every lyric of the song made people feel like they were back in their own homes. They felt safe and warm, as if they could forget the cruelty of the war, even if it was only for a short time. Luckily, backup troops finally arrived to help them, and thanks to them, Billy and his team finally succeeded in pushing the Germans back and returned safely. From that moment on, Billy slowly began to forgive the past and started to accept Winnie-the-Pooh in his life.
Pops turned my whole life to a gold mine. While I was low-key trying to hold mine, he put my face on the shelf just to stack a check. Left me by myself with a noose around my neck. The world loved the bear, but they hate the kid. They don't really care about the pain I hid. He sold my childhood memories for a little clout, while these internal enemies trying to scream it out. So peace to that fake boy in the fairy tale. I was just a play toy in a sales trail, man. I don't need the fame or the royalty. I just wanted the name and some loyalty. Nanny was the only one keeping it 100, while I'm the only son feeling blindsided and plundered. He built a fantasy just to hide the trauma, but left a vacancy and a whole lot of drama. Now I'm strapped up trying to find a war, cause I'm backed up against my father's door. The bullets in the field feel more authentic than the lies he spilled in that fake aesthetic. He traded innocence for some paper stacks. Ain't got no common sense how to face the facts. I'm the boy behind the bear that you never knew, just standing there looking at a broken view. Keep that 100-acre wood in the phone of your son. It's understood that the damage is done. I'm a fading ghost of a stolen name. I'm leaving the coast in this golden frame.